In today's video, we're exploring the possibility of a huge trade between the Sens and the Jets this offseason. Both have types of players that each are looking for. We'll discuss how it could work, if it makes sense, and what the deal could mean for both sides. Plus, we have some more updates on the Stanley Cup playoffs. The Maple Leafs have forced Game 7, and of course, we have a couple more games going this evening. We'll see if those series will be ending or going a little bit further. Plus, we have some updates as well in Pittsburgh with some potential coaching changes. We know they've already made a change with one coach. Could it lead to further, including Mike Sullivan? We have the finalists for the Jack Adams Award and a whole lot more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot to cover today. Let's start, of course, with the news from the Stanley Cup playoffs. Last night, we saw the Toronto Maple Leafs defeat the Boston Bruins for the second straight game, forcing a Game 7, which will go Saturday night in Boston. William Nylander had a big game. Of course, Willie Stout scored both goals for the Leafs, leading them, and ended up actually technically being a 2-1 win. A lot of people thought it was 2-0, but the Bruins did get a goal with less than 1 second on the clock, so that technically did make it in before the buzzer went, so it did count. 2-1 win. Either way, the Maple Leafs without Austin Matthews the last couple of games have played a lot better. They've played a pretty solid defensive style game, gotten good goaltending from Joseph Woll. Woll has not had to be fantastic. He has not had to steal a game. He's been good when he needed to be, but hasn't had to be amazing. So, no disrespect to him. It's not like I'm saying he's been bad or anything, but he just hasn't had to be phenomenal. I mean, he's made a few big saves here and there, but for the most part, the Bruins have been pretty pathetic. Pasternak has been invisible, hasn't done much. Marchand's been quiet the last couple games, took a couple of undisciplined penalties in Game 6 as well. Swayman, on the other hand, has been really good for Boston. And if it wasn't for him, I think the Leafs would have won with a wider margin, for sure. So we'll see here if who's going home empty-handed Saturday night, and of course, who will move on. One fan base is going to be super excited and ready to go against the Florida Panthers, and the other one will come to a close. The Bruins have been notorious for winning these Game 7s against the Leafs over the years in prior series, so we'll see if the Leafs can exercise those demons and move on. Of course, you get tonight the Nashville Predators and the Vancouver Canucks going at it, as well as Vegas and Dallas, so we'll see if either of those series will make it to a 7th game. We did learn as well that the second round is going to start on Sunday with the Hurricanes and the Rangers playing game number 1. We also got some interesting news today in Pittsburgh. They've relieved assistant coach, or I guess he was technically the associate coach, Todd Rierden. He's been let go. So there's a lot of talks that Mike Sullivan is not thrilled about this. I've seen a mixed kind of different amount of reports out there, but I know Frank Seravalli was saying that, according to his sources, Sullivan was very much against making any changes to the staff. Now, we've heard rumblings about Sullivan maybe parting ways with Pittsburgh, working out a release from his contract, maybe heading to New Jersey to work with his old pal Tom Fitzgerald there, who they're looking for a full-time permanent coach right now. We can't confirm that's in the works by any means, but it certainly makes you wonder if the changes with the staff will lead to Sullivan being, unhappy enough to go down that road. We don't know at this point, but seems to be a little bit of a power struggle and a disagreement of ways to think this team better and ways to fix things here. So Todd Reirden's been a long-time coach, was briefly a head coach, but for a long time been an assistant coach. I'm assuming he'll likely get picked up without too much work, and depending on where he wants to go, of course, he'll probably have some options to continue coaching in the NHL in some capacity. But I'll be curious to see if this leads to further changes behind the bench with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Now, of course, staying with coaches, we do get the finalists now for the Jack Adams Award for Coach of the Year. That's Vancouver Canucks head coach Rick Tocchet, Predators head coach Andrew Brunette, and Jets head coach Rick Bowness. So all three very deserving coaches, all had really good years with their clubs, of course. There's certainly some arguments to be made for a few other coaches that deserve some recognition as well. I suspect probably going to see Rick Tocchet win the award. I think he's probably get the biggest improvement out of his team, although all of these teams and all these coaches were responsible for their teams getting better. I think the improvement in Vancouver might have been just significant enough to get him over the hump. So we'll see when they announce the winners here. Of course, we also got confirmation too that the NHL draft lottery will be on Tuesday night. So stay tuned for that. We'll find out who gets the first overall pick in the 2024 NHL draft. The Winnipeg Jets today signed one of their prospects. Young goaltender Thomas Milic gets his 3-year entry-level contract. Of course, Milic was bit of a late blooming goaltender in the WHL. Was the 2023 5th-round pick. But of course, by the time he was drafted, he was already, I believe he was already around 20 years old. So, because he's only 21 now. So he would have been 20 when he was drafted. Milic ended up playing a pretty solid role with the Seattle team, who had a real good run there in the WHL all the way to the Memorial Cup. Milic ended up, I believe he won a few awards as well, had a real solid finish, got to be on Team Canada before with the World Juniors when he was 19. And this year, he has already had a chance to play some pro hockey in the lower levels. He did play some between the East Coast and American Hockey League, so he had contract to play down there, but he didn't have his NHL ELC, so he could even be possibly eligible for a call-up. So Milic, I think, still has pretty good potential, still only 21 years old. So good to see him get his contract, and he'll be having a bigger role in the Jets system for the upcoming season next fall, probably playing a bigger role with the Manitoba Moose would be my suspicions. We found out today the roster, most of it, for Hockey Canada heading to the World Championships. There's going to be I guess you could say on not just in Canada's team, but in the U.S. and others, especially U.S. and Canada, though, more like prominent names going than before, and a lot of young talent. The Team Canada team is going to be led by a lot of really high-end offensive skill with the young stars. So Connor Bedard, Adam Fantilli will lead the way in that front. Dylan Gunter, Dawson Mercer, Ridley Gregg, Dylan Cousins, Macklin Celebrini's heading over, and a few veterans like Michael Bunting, Andrew Mangiapane, Bo Byram on the back end with Caden Gooley out of Montreal, Owen Power out of Buffalo, with a veteran like Colton Parayko from St. Louis going, Owen Zellweger from the Ducks. So all kinds of really solid young players. The goaltending duo will be from the St. Louis Blues, Joe Hofer and Jordan Binnington, with Nico Dawes from the Devils coming over as well. That still leaves, I think, 3 or 4 spots open on the roster. There's a few other players. I didn't name every single one, but there's a few more spots open for some players that may be eliminated here in the coming days, since there's still a few teams end up getting kicked out of round 1, and anybody who might go out if there's a quick series in round 2. So we'll see, but Canada can add a few more. I thought Sidney Crosby might go, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. I know Team Canada and Team USA coaches and GMs both all were encouraging players, if you want to be able to play for your country on the Four Nation Face-Off tournament coming up next year, or the Olympics the year after, then definitely head over and support Team Canada if you're able to. Obviously, some of these guys, like if Sidney Crosby doesn't go to World Championships, that won't affect anything. You're still going to put Sidney Crosby on those teams if he's wanting to play. So we'll see, but it should be a little bit more of a star-studded tournament than in past years, and it should lead to some a lot more competitive, exciting games. It'll be more fun to watch. We'll certainly be talking about the tournament here after it gets underway a little bit later here into May. The New York Islanders today confirmed with media availability from GM Lou Lamoriello and Patrick Waugh, plus players. Lou will be back. I know there was a lot of talk and speculation that Lou might be done, might be either moving up to just as a president and going to hire a new GM, or maybe he'll retire altogether. But that's not the case. Lou confirmed that he would be back next season. Not any kind of surprise that Patrick Waugh would be back. He hasn't really been there that long, and certainly helped lead them into the playoffs, even though they had a disappointing first round loss. I think they were still up against a really tough team in Carolina. And, for the most part, it's not shocking what happened. I think Waugh did what he could with that roster. They did hint at some changes, which one of the things from Lou's remarks that taken away was he did comment that younger players, it sounds like young players will be getting more opportunity. So I would suspect that they're going to try to get some more of their prospects if they're ready to jump into the lineup. They certainly could use some more speed in that lineup. I know the way Patrick Waugh likes to play and the systems he uses certainly will be a lot more effective with faster players, especially fast players with high hockey IQ. You got to have the smarts and the speed to go along with it. If you have one, not the other, it's not a good combination. So we'll see what they do in that front. They're definitely going to try to get a bit younger and faster. As far as some names that you can see maybe on the way out, I mean, hard to say with the Long Island because Clutterbuck is not signed, Martin's not signed. Both exclaim that they want to continue playing for the Islanders. I mean, we know how loyal Lou is. Wouldn't be surprising. I just hope if they do get contracts that they're not big money or long term. It's just sometimes you never know what he's going to do with some of these guys. Like, he's loyalty to a fault, which is good in a way, but sometimes it's a little overkill. But guys like Pajot, I wonder if he might, be a trade candidate. Even a Brock Nelson. I mean, not to say that they don't like Nelson or that he's not good, but he's a guy who doesn't have a lot of term left on his contract, who could generate a good return. He's got good size. He's a good goal scorer. Can play center, can play wing. I think that there's a lot of value there with Brock Nelson. So I do wonder if they look at things and be like, okay, well, does it make sense to wait and then do an extension with him? Or if we get a good return value now, would he be a player we should move? And that's been a problem with Lou. I mean, Lou has been loyal to the veterans like way too much. Like, he needs to get some more. They need some more scoring. They need some more youth. They need some more speed. Like, they need a variety of things in there. And there's really no way to get it without giving up something that's decent. So I think guys like Pajot and Nelson could find their way to the trade market. It will be interesting to see if they bring back guys like Clutterbuck or Martin or whatnot. I know they've played a long time as an identity line with Casey Cizikas, but at some point you got to move on and change the dynamic of your team, or it's not going to get better. So we'll be curious to see what the Islanders have in store this offseason. Now, as I mentioned as well, could we see a significant, pretty close to being a blockbuster deal between the Ottawa Senators and the Winnipeg Jets? I came across an article earlier today suggesting this, and you know what? It makes a lot of sense. We've talked in recent days how the Sens will be making some moves, obviously trying to get better. They had a disappointing season, and they have a fair bit of things they need to tweak. And it's not going to be an easy summer for Steve Staios. He's got a lot of work in front of him to get this team back to the playoffs. And one of the things they got to decide on is the future of Jacob Chychrun. And it has nothing to do with the fact whether they like the player. I think they do. But at the same time, he's only 1 year away from needing a new contract. You have Jake Sanderson and Thomas Chabot, also left shot defensemen. Both making $8 million. Chychrun's making, I think, 4.6, and he's going to be looking for a big raise. So can you have a third defenseman making anywhere near what those two guys make? Not really. So from a financial perspective and cap perspective, does it make a ton of sense? Not so much. I mean, if you're keeping Chychrun, somebody else has to go, and it's not going to be Jake Sanderson. He's one of the top young, bright defensemen in the NHL, and by far the team's best D-man already in his young career. So it would have to be Chabot. And at this point, we don't have any reason to think that the team would want to move him. There is a lot of other good reasons to keep Chabot on the team as well. So it's tough to say what is the right thing to do in that case. But if you're going to move Chychrun, you're going to want something back in return that makes a lot of sense for your team. And based on what we had heard from the Jets' end-of-season media availability the other day after being defeated and kicked out of the playoffs by the Colorado Avalanche, it sounds like there's a lot of uncertainty around forward Nikolai Ehlers. Ehlers is certainly a guy who could be 25 to 30 goal scorer, has great speed. He's only 28 years old, has like Chychrun, 1 year left on his contract, making $6 million. To me, I think that makes sense for a spot. They're both in the same predicament, a year away from being UFA. Their teams are kind of in transition. And Winnipeg at this rate might not be bringing back Brendan Dillon. He's a pending UFA, no contract talks as of yet. So, he's, approaching his mid-30s. Right now, we don't know that he's going back. Dylan DeMello is also a pending UFA. He's also a player that I think Ottawa would have interest in, depending on what Winnipeg plans to do there. But I mean, he's a pending free agent, so I don't know. That could be a separate transaction. I mean, this deal could evolve into being a bigger trade. Ottawa has other defensemen that could maybe make sense for Winnipeg if they could get DeMello on a sign-and trade or just get him into free agency. I think Ottawa would be willing to probably put in either a Brandstrom or a Bernard Docker, one of those two guys, along with Chychrun. There could be other pieces too to make the deal a little bit bigger and more expansive for both sides. Ehlers would be a terrific fit, especially if Ottawa could get their hands on Ehlers and DeMello as a free agent. I mean, Tyler Toffoli is another pending UFA that I think they'll probably show some interest in as well. I mean, obviously, like I said, those guys, if they did the trade soon enough and could get their signing rights, I mean, that itself wouldn't be a huge return for Winnipeg if they're not going to be bringing them back. But to get their signing rights, at least one of those players, along with Ehlers, for Chychrun and some combination of either Brandstrom, Bernard Docker, or maybe it's a forward, I don't know, but some other combination there to make it work for everybody involved. Maybe it's a pick, maybe it's a prospect, I don't know. But the main piece is being Chychrun and Ehlers. To me, makes a lot of sense. Like I said, if the Senators are going to be needing to make an addition, like we talked about in the Sens offseason video that I did earlier today, I said that ideally they should add a top 6 left shot forward, and if they can get a top 4 right shot defenseman, that would be like your main pieces. Outside of trying to fix goaltending, which is obviously a big priority too, that would be one of the big things to look at. If they could get a guy like DeMello, and we don't know that's going to happen yet. I mean, DeMello could very well re-sign in Winnipeg, but if he doesn't, or they're having any difficulties, bringing him back to Ottawa where he was before, to play a top 4 role with Zub on the other right shot D, and you can get Ehlers, you become a better team. You really do. Ehlers is a versatile winger that can play in a variety of spots. Like I said, I think that's the kind of winger that Ottawa needs. Somebody who can be a consistent top 6 guy, but depending on the health of Josh Norris or where things are at, somebody who can kind of float in your middle 6 in a couple of different spots. And there's even the case where he could probably mesh well with Tim Stützle with his speed. He could even end up being on your first line. It just depends, right? You could put him in a bunch of spots. I think he could mesh well with a couple of different of their other centers there. So it's an interesting concept for sure. I mean, it's not often they have a great fit for 2 teams and they have almost identical what they're looking for. I think Winnipeg's going to probably want to do a variety of things as well, but I do think revamping their blue line is definitely going to be part of that. And Chychrun is young enough with a good contract, obviously need an extension, that might make a lot of sense for them. So if they can do that and Ehlers can go to Ottawa with an extension, to me, that's a win-win situation. And like I said, you could expand it. You could add things on both sides to make it interesting. Winnipeg has a number of things that Ottawa would have interest in, like I said, including a couple of their pending UFAs. So be curious to see how interchangeable, how connected these two teams just might turn out to be this offseason. Let me know your thoughts on the potential for this type of trade. Does it make sense to you? What other pieces, or how well do you think it could be for both sides? Let me know in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.